بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. أما بعد. حياكم الله. Welcome to the fourth part in the ahkam pertaining to the Ihrām. The ahkam pertaining to the Ihrām and the violations pertaining to the Ihrām. So in the first part, we took the violations, the mahdhurat, pertaining to both men and women. In the second part, we took the violations pertaining to the Ihrām, specific to men. And in the third part, we took the violations regarding the Ihrām that are specific to women. And in this final part, connected to and pertaining to the ahkam of Ihrām and the violations, then we are going to discuss how to deal with Ihrām violations and also the prescribed penalties. And so we are going to first and foremost divide these penalties and the instances or the circumstances that one may be in as it pertains to these penalties and as it pertains to falling into these violations. So as it pertains to falling into these violations of Ihrām, then a person is in one of three conditions. He will always be in one of three conditions. Number one being that he was forgetful or ignorant or compelled, meaning forced, or asleep when it happened. And then due to that, he fell into one of these violations. So what happens to that individual then is that there is no penalty regarding them, meaning they do not have to pay fidyah, they do not have to slaughter or do anything. Rather, also they also do not have any sin, since they were either asleep or forced or ignorant of the ruling or forgetful, that they forgot about the ruling. So an example of this would be someone who is a muhrim, a male, who is asleep and covers his head with his blanket while he is asleep without realizing. So there's nothing upon this individual because they did it while in a state of slumber, while they are sleeping. However, once they wake up and they realize that they've covered their head, they must immediately then uncover their head and remove the blanket from their head. The second condition that one may be in is that one deliberately commits a violation of Ihrām, meaning the previous matters that were mentioned in parts 1, 2, and 3, that someone does one of them on purpose. However, due to a good reason, a legislated reason, meaning they did not do it seeking to sin, rather they did it for a legitimate reason that allows them to do so. So upon him is what is applicable due to him falling into a violation, which is a penalty. But there is no sin upon him. And so that penalty, whether it is a slaughtering a sheep or whether it is a different penalty, that will apply depending on which violation they fell into. That will depend on which violation they fell into. However, if they do the violation intentionally, but not seeking sin or not wanting to just simply do the violation, and they have a legitimate reason to do so, then they are not sinful. However, they must pay the penalty. In this situation, then the verse applies. فَمَنْ كَانَ مِنْكُمْ مَرِيضًا أَوْ بِهِ أَذَى مِنْ رَأْسِهِ فَفِدْيَةٌ مِنْ صِيَامٍ أَوْ صَدَقَةٍ أَوْ نُسُكٍ. What applies to this individual is the verse in Surah Al-Baqarah, and whoever among you is ill or has an ailment of the head, making shaving necessary, must offer a ransom of fasting 3 days, or charity, sadaqah, which is to feed 6 needy people, or to sacrifice, to do a fidya, to slaughter a sheep. And so one will choose one of these 3 different actions. One will choose one of these 3 actions if they fall into that category of falling into a violation of the Ihrām, however, not with a legitimate reason. Falling into one of the violations of the Ihrām with a legitimate reason to do so. The third category is the one who commits a violation deliberately, intentionally, without a valid excuse, that they do not have a valid excuse. So upon such a person is what is applicable, such as a penalty, and he is additionally considered sinful. So they must fulfill the penalty attached to the particular violation that they fell into, and likewise they must make tawbah and repent because they have fallen into a sin. Now the different violations have different categories. Different violations have different categories. So the first category is that which requires no penalty. So it is a violation from amongst the violations of the Ihrām. However, there is no specific penalty attached to it, such as fasting or feeding the needy or slaughtering a sheep. There is no such penalty attached to it. And that is the marriage contract. That is the marriage contract, meaning the one who engages in a marriage contract, or the one who offers their daughter or the woman that they are responsible for in marriage while they are in a state of Ihrām. Then they must repent. However, there is no specific penalty for that. Number 2 is that which requires a penalty of a camel or a cow. And that is for having sexual intercourse before the first tahallul, and that is connected to Hajj. When you exit the first Ihrām, the first state of Ihrām, for the ones who know the ahkam of Hajj or have done Hajj, then the one who has sexual intercourse with his wife, at that point, then they must slaughter a cow or offer a cow or a camel as their sacrifice, as an expiation for having fallen into that mahadhur, that violation of the Ihrām. The third penalty is making compensation or its equivalent, and that is for killing wild game. That is for killing wild game, and that is for the one who is hunting, which in our current time is not, does not happen. However, we learn the rules as we never know how that it is possible that one may in the future, Allahu A'lam, that hunting and these types of ahkam may repeat themselves, and so we learn them as they are in the books of fiqh, and they've existed throughout history. However, in our current time, as we know Mecca to be now, then this particular hukum is pretty much non-existent. The fourth and final penalty for an affair that requires fasting or charity or a sacrifice. Either you fast 3 days, or you feed 6 poor people, or you slaughter a sheep in accordance to what was mentioned previously in part 1. in accordance to what was mentioned in part 1 regarding the penalty for ailment or harm. And that is for shaving the head while in Ihrām. Shaving the head while in Ihrām before having completed your Umrah. So you are still in the state of Ihrām and have not completed your Umrah, and you shave your head. Yani you have not completed the sa'i as of yet, and you shave your head. And the scholars mention, and this is a difference of opinion amongst the scholars, that they have mentioned that connected to this penalty all the rest of the violations, with the exception of the 3 mentioned above. Number 1, the marriage contract. Number 2, the sexual intercourse while in the state of Ihrām. And number 3, killing wild game, meaning animals. Those 3 are excluded from this. That some of the scholars are of the opinion that all of the other violations to do with Ihrām, that one has the choice of either fasting 3 days or feeding 6 poor people or slaughtering a sheep. And the other opinion is that no, one must slaughter a sheep for the other violations, such as the violations connected to the miqat, that someone reaches the miqat and they are wearing stitched clothing, for example, and they've passed the miqat now and not wearing Ihrām, or you use perfume, or you clip your nails, or you cover your head intentionally. All of these other violations, then when you do them purposely and intentionally without reason, then one opinion states that you have the choice to fast 3 days or feed 6 people or you slaughter a sheep. And the other opinion is that no, that you slaughter a sheep for the other violations. However, specifically for the shaving of the head, then that is the one where if you have a need to do so, to shave your head, then you choose one of those 3 methods as a penalty: fasting 3 days, or feeding 6 poor people, or slaughtering a sheep. So that concludes the ahkam pertaining to the Ihrām. Inshallah ta'ala, you found it beneficial. And inshallah ta'ala, in our next video, we will be doing the description of the Umrah from beginning to end, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, and it will be done in a way where it is a practical Umrah, yani in our modern times. So inshallah ta'ala, I will be trying to include in there how you would be doing Umrah in our current time today, meaning starting from your home and traveling to Mecca and then arriving at the Haram, what you will see at the Haram, what to look for at the Haram at specific spots, etc., etc., bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. So until the next session, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.